Hello everyone and welcome to another Ginger Prime Reacts video. We're going to be doing, at least the goal for 2024, is a React video on Saturdays. Now I've reached out to Legacy Gaming to see if I could get permission to react to this video, and they have since provided that permission. So that's a part of the goal. There are some exceptions to the, I guess, reaching out for permission rule, but their link, their tags are all in the description of this video, and please do go engage with their content because they are the original author of this. But this is a request that came from you guys, so be sure to be a part of the Discord if you want to send these kind of suggestions. I'm also doing members exclusive content, and speaking of that, Riot and Eden Gaming, because of their support, this video will have no mid-roll ads, so for everybody. So if you guys are, if you enjoy that aspect, be sure to sound off in the comments with thanks, Ryden, for their support. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video. We're going to dive into the future of MMO games. Things are about to change forever. I've already pre-liked the video. You can always pre-like these videos and take them away if you feel like you didn't like the video. Or you can double tap that dislike button. I hear it gets stuck sometimes, but we're having some fun here. All right, let's get into it. And let's see what we got to do today.
The popularity of game genres rises and falls. What initially starts out as innovative and engaging quickly turns into oversaturated and played out. And all of that can happen in the span of just a couple of years. Developers cling to the past and try and reinvent the future, and in most cases, it doesn't work. But one genre that's been humming along since the early 90s is set for a huge second golden age. My name is Kodiak, this is Legacy Gaming, and today we'll explore MMORPGs, the genre I believe is about to experience a huge renaissance.
With the jumping in on that, like why I feel the same in terms of both its renaissance, but also in terms of, not that it's going to return to like the highs of World of Warcraft, so I think it's important when we talk about renaissance that we're not talking about that, but we're talking about it truly differentiating itself from the pack. Other games have taken MMO elements, right? And this has created, in a way, all bundled together, the games as a service model, but the games as a service model and MMOs, in my mind, I think should be kind of two separate things, even though they are generally treated as one, I guess, in probably the more popular areas of, gaming is concerned. And the reason I want to separate those out is that the games as a service model has adopted some of the things from MMOs, but not everything. And the problem that MMOs have is they've adopted some of those things. The things that got adopted in the games as a service category have been highlighted in the MMO community. And the things that I think make MMOs unique has dwindled. However, with the new technology and new business models, as much as I hate FOMO, I think that MMOs should try to avoid that, like the artificialness of it, right? Like a battle pass. New World's battle pass system, I get it. I think that's essentially, it makes a buy-to-play battle pass model, but the FOMO of it expiring is just too much. I don't think a lot of people, I find MMOs very relaxing, and when I feel pressured to do something, same thing with dailies in these games, it burns me out. But I think we're seeing that rejection, and ultimately with technology, Unreal Engine 5, cloud computing, cloud gaming, allowing for new experiences, the MMO can hopefully define itself again, and that's what I feel like that renaissance truly is. Anyway, let's see what they say.
If you're a 30-something-year-old like myself, then you most likely grew up alongside the MMO genre. I vividly remember my cousin introducing me to EverQuest Online, and from that point onwards, my brain wanted nothing more than to dive into the always online worlds developers were creating. Now fast forward 20 plus years later, and that desire to recapture the excitement I first felt in my cousin's room still burns within me, and I'd argue that there are a lot of players just like me that are longing for the second coming of MMORPGs. There's a lot of reasons why I think the second golden age is almost upon us, and for the next few minutes, I'm going to try and lay out all of that for you. It's a discussion, and while I've played a ton of MMOs in my day, there's no doubt a few of you out there have even more experience, so feel free to jump into the comments at any point and share your thoughts. I honestly love when our community takes the time to really crack into an issue, so don't be afraid to speak your mind.
I've never played Minecraft.
So my first point is this. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. The further removed we are from the original golden age of MMORPGs, the more we want a resurgence. I think the clearest example of this is the absolute dominance games like WoW Classic have had on the genre. It's not that the game is doing anything radically different, but it's tapping into a time and place where we all felt immersed
Season of
in our
Discovery,
games.
though, also
you could say the same thing about RuneScape, a game that still pulls in hundreds of thousands of players a month, even though the game is decades old. With that in mind, you might be able to draw the conclusion that MMORPG players just want what's familiar to them. They're trying to capture the lightning in a bottle effect from 20 years ago, and while I'd agree with you, we also have to recognize that new MMORPGs have managed to generate just as much hype, but what happens after launch is often a disaster.
I think it's important to highlight that hype is a like almost in a way necessary evil, right? Like it exists. There is like within balance. There can be like games kind of require it in that regards, and so it helps drive interest. It helps get that exposure, but there's plenty of gamers. I think probably the majority. Like if we talk about MMOs, we're talking about a niche community. Then we break it down even further, like sandbox MMOs are even more niche than that of the theme park. And I believe the future of the game is the sand park. It's a blending of theme park elements that gives you that ability to step in that, in a way, more casual and, to a degree. But then at the same time, sandbox, has that like player driven and players are kind of the content, so to speak. And I think the blending of those will be an interesting future, but also taking what people have wanted in these old games and modernizing them, right? Like I would love to see them make Final Fantasy XI in Unreal Engine. I do think there will be concessions that have to somewhat be made for the now, as opposed to how it used to be. Lives with technology, interestingly enough, have only gotten busier. We already have ways to socialize. So for the players who found MMOs in the past as their social engagement metric, that has changed, that has shifted. And because of that shift, there are still people who want that and crave that, but it's that hype. Same thing with like WoW numbers hype. Like you take a hype for any game, and then once that kind of dies off, then you really get a real idea of what that is. And I think what I get annoyed at with especially other content creators, analysts out there, is with that they use the hype as a stick to beat down the community that likes the genre. And that happens from time to time because the incentive there as a YouTuber is clearly there from both a monetary and a clout and a growth and an algorithm mindset. Like it's almost foolish not to, if that is your goal, if your aspiration is for that.
Understand that. You just need to look at games like Diablo 4, which is currently Blizzard's fastest selling game of all time. Think about that for a second. That means
right?
It's the highest pre-launch unit sales ever on both console and PC. Everyone knows the name Diablo. The franchise has incredible name ID, arguably the most valuable thing in this case. However, the decline of the game post-launch is almost as impressive as the energy beforehand. There's a great video by a small YouTube channel called Comeback Kids that I highly recommend you check out if you want a full breakdown of just what happened after Diablo 4's launch. It's a great look at all the decisions that happened or didn't happen in some cases that caused a mass exodus of players.
All that being said, though, my point
still stands.
Reach out
the
and give
appetite
permission.
for a huge new MMORPG in almost any form, be it a top-down or third-person game, is there. My second point has more to do with the gaming landscape than anything else. 2023 was an absolute banger year, and we're working on a video right now that really helps highlight just how incredible this year has been for gaming. But that's not exactly repeatable in 2024 and beyond, at least right now at the time of making this video, looks lackluster. Sure, there are some cool games on the horizon, that will always be the case, but most years there are a handful of games you know are going to resonate more broadly. I'm talking about the Cyberpunks or Starfields of the world. Hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of concurrent players all flood to these games upon release in a fervor that's just not replicated with every other title.
But that's also the nature of gaming. Like, I think one of the things is that we tend to obviously glorify the past, But there were so many games that were just like lackluster back then. Same thing every year. But 2023 is an exceptional year because we saw so many big, especially single player RPGs release over the course of the year. We're talking Hogwarts Legacy, Baldur's Gate 3, we're talking Starfield, we're talking like I'm drawing a blank. I don't know why. It is what it is. Tons of these incredible games. I think and then I think that's actually really directly competed with Starfield. Final Fantasy 16, that was the one I was thinking of. Couldn't remember. I guess Diablo 4 maybe to a degree. And you see this high level of competition, where I think that actually, like 2023, the single player RPG narrative really drove. If you think of that as a monolith, as a games as a service, it really pulled a lot of people out of their games, especially as they've been waiting for content updates and more. And that's actually good. Like that you can step away from these games as a service, these MMOs, and come back to them. And I think that's a good sign of health, as opposed to a negative. People are leaving the game. If the developers keep working on it, keep communicating, keep updating it consistently, then I think you start to build trust and know that, like, yeah, I can take a break. The game's not going to be deleted if I do, and I can come back in 6 months or a year or whatever. So that way I'm having a more enjoyable experience overall.
2024, by comparison, is a scarce year, and if you don't believe me, just go check out our video where we cover close to 24 games slated for release sometime next year. It's a good list, but not nearly as impressive as some other years. Major developers are either in planning or deep development of other games we just don't know about, and in that vacuum creates the perfect opportunity for a new or completely revamped MMORPG to swoop in and steal the spotlight. Granted, that is a finite window of opportunity because, as we know, new games are always in development,
New
so
protocol,
these games
baby.
have to strike while the iron is hot, and that's almost impossible to do with a genre that requires so much time and resources to develop, but still, the opportunity is there. My third point has more to do with people than anything else, and in this case, I'm talking about legends of the industry who are bursting on or back onto the scene, which is cause enough for excitement. The most notable is Chris Metzen, who made his presence known at BlizzCon 2023, returning to the company after his retirement back in 2018. This time as the executive director of the Warcraft universe.
That's a real big question.
Metzen's impact on Blizzard cannot be understated. And while a simple Google search will tell you all you need to know about his history, it's his future I'm more interested in. He's charged with leading Warcraft forward, and that is a huge undertaking, especially for World of Warcraft, which is coming up on 20 years since its launch, but we will talk about that in a little bit. There's also Greg Street, aka Ghostcrawler, who was the lead system designer for World of Warcraft from 2008 to 2013, arguably when the game was at the peak of its popularity. Greg was instrumental in developing systems that players are still enjoying today. Greg moved from Blizzard to Riot Games, where he ended his tenure working on a still-to-be-announced MMORPG.
This is one of the most interesting things. Like, I don't know if you've heard, or the expression is that there is no better game than an unreleased game. But as soon as a game releases, it's like that's where everything kind of comes crumbling down. And so it's been interesting to see so many people say the Riot MMO. That's when MMOs are going in. They could absolutely be right, but we know absolutely nothing about it. And Greg was on that, decided to go create a new MMO. Says there's a really good team in place, but we don't have any announcement. And I do wonder if we'll see an announcement this year, or if that's just going to be a big project they keep working on. And like in a way where Blizzard turned Overwatch out of Project Titan, I believe, into a new MMO, or a hero shooter as opposed to an MMO, because of reasons, right? Blizzard's working on a new survival. Like, there's so many really cool things going on right now that I'm excited about. But Greg Street, Ghostcrawler, is an interesting case study because it's that, like, him alone, I think, helped propel the mythos of the Riot MMO. His new MMO, people are obviously very interested in it, but it also feels like, being that it's so ethereal, that it's so in our own heads, it's the perfect MMO. And so a lot of people look to that. Like, MMOs that are released are judged off of things that don't exist, except for in our imaginations. And that's both fair and at the same time a little bit, yeah, a little bit unfair to say, but you guys can let me know in the comments how you feel about that.
Talk about this game more in the future, but I do think it's going to be huge given the massive world building that's going on at Riot. What I think is most interesting is Ghostcrawler's recent announcement that he's formed a new studio called Fantastic Pixel Castle, recruited industry veterans that have extensive experience with massive AAA titles, and is planning on launching a new MMORPG, codename Project Ghost.
When? Like, it's an interesting announcement. One of the things that has fatigued me greatly about, I guess the 2005 to 2015, 2016, it's like these 10-year development projects, and we know MMOs take a lot of time. There are some interesting insights. Like, as much as I know I've seen people decry or concerned about AI, like with a team, with new technology and new tools, does that make MMOs way more accessible from development, reducing cost? Not that it's reducing the scope, the scale. It's just you say, hey, we're going to take these people and they're now 150 or 200% more efficient, which allows us to address and do things we never thought we could do. And also gameplay, AI and things like that will be an interesting case study to see. But it's interesting because like they're announcing that they made it. So it's at the time of this recording, it is January 2024. Like you add 6 years development time for an MMO, and assuming that you're hitting 6 years, like we're talking about a game that's launching in 2030. And if it comes at all before that, and it's great, like that, fantastic.
While announcing a new MMO and launching a new MMO are wildly different things, Greg made it clear in the project's announcement video that the game will be rolled out to the community early, as he, and by extension the team, believe that a community-developed experience is going to result in a stronger game.
That does sound very sandbox MMO-ish in that regards. PAX Days did the same thing with early access. It's this thing I've actually kind of advocated for, especially for these kind of games, as opposed to the hype and then people burning out because there's issues. You let people really form kind of a core game, what is happening, and then when it is officially kind of transitions and you do pick up that hype, you already have a baked in fan base that has answers, that has trust in the developers, that feels and knows what's going to happen. So if they're announcing basically they're going to do an early access game, that's exciting, and that would take at from 2030. I don't know, like if they wanted to do 3, like PAX Day, 3 years, in that regards, it seems like they've been in development for that, and then get people in for 2 to 3 years, and then be able to release. Hey, that would put it 25, 26, 2027. Yeah. And that could also align with a new generation of consoles as well. So from a specs sheet, and the reason why that's interesting is, consoles have kind of pushed PC gaming, obviously, to deliver more. PC gaming, it's on its own right now, but that could say, hey, like we're going to also come out on console, and these are the specs. Meaning that doesn't mean that it needs to launch in early access, but you're talking about a whole new set of tech. I mean, it's just going to be wild. It's going to be fun, and it's hopefully going to enable new experiences that differentiate what an MMO is or could be, as opposed to what is Fortnite and these shared world games as service games.
Long story short, this is a project to watch. Competition is good, whether it's professional sports, consumer goods, or in this case, MMORPGs. The more legitimate projects that are out there, the more the pressure is on. On the developer side, you hope that more competition means going that extra mile during the development process, creating that one layer deeper that keeps players engaged. On the player side, competition means making a choice, or multiple choices if you have the time and money. The best games rise to the top, and if they continue to grow and adapt to the changing needs of the player base, they succeed. My final point as we lay out the case for what's to come is simply this. People are still playing MMORPGs in droves, and while specific data about the biggest games are closely held secrets, there's enough information out there to know the genre is still wildly popular. Looking at the most transparent source of data we have, SteamDB, we can see a few mid-tier MMOs still performing well. Lost Ark sees about 45 to 55,000 concurrent players throughout the day. New World sees anywhere from 30 to 45,000 concurrent players. Path of Exile has roughly 14 to
I've never
27,000
played Path of
concurrent
Exile.
players on any
People
given
recommend
day,
it.
and this list doesn't account for some of the biggest games in the MMO space, including World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy XIV,
Two
and
biggest
old-school
MMOs.
RuneScape. But
Final
the
Fantasy
issue with these
14 just
games
crossed
is that
30
they're
million
established, and in
registered
many
accounts,
cases,
not
played
active,
out. For better or worse,
still, it's
players
impressive.
want that shiny new object, and a new expansion or DLC just doesn't have the same power as a new IP or a complete reset of an existing experience. This is the foundation for why I think a second golden age of MMORPGs is coming. The lack of releases has made players hungry for something new and fully immersive. There's little in the way of real crossover competition from other games and genres. Industry legends have burst back onto the scene with bold intentions, and MMOs are still wildly popular, with millions of players engaging with the genre every day. The table is set for something massive, but before we get to what's coming, we have to look at the current transformation of the genre and the development happening with MMOs that are popular right now. MMORPGs, for better or worse, haven't disappeared. In fact, they continue to rumble on, doing everything they can to hold onto their existing communities while attempting, often in vain, to bring in new players. I wanted to quickly run down the most popular games and some of the latest enhancements in each of those games, whether that be a recent patch, upcoming DLC, or something else entirely. I would imagine that I, like most of you, have dipped in and out of a number of MMOs throughout the past couple of years, attempting to find some sense of satisfaction. Don't lie, we've all been there. That being said, there are some changes happening to the genre's biggest games, so let's just take a quick look. Arguably the game with the most set in motion right now, World of Warcraft just revealed the World Soul Saga, a brand new set of 3 upcoming DLCs that will continue the story of Azeroth set in motion almost 20 years ago. The first DLC, The War Within, will take players to the center of Azeroth, and after his years of absence, Anduin Wrynn is back as a central pillar once again. As I mentioned before, Chris Metzen, now executive director of the Warcraft universe, has near complete control over the direction the game takes from here, and in lockstep with some of the new systems revealed such as Delves, small group world content that can reward endgame gear. Yeah, there's a lot going on here. Another game that continues to add content as it tries to maintain its foothold in the genre is New World. The game recently saw a small resurgence in players thanks to a new DLC called Rise of the Angry Earth, which introduced a new storyline, bumped up the level and gear score cap, introduced a new weapon and gear rarity tier, and most notably, introduced mounts. I'll be honest, the game has continued to surprise me with its heads-down approach to pumping out content. Mounts, although reportedly not implemented well, is still a monumental change for the game, and if Amazon continues to invest money into the project, who knows where New World will be in a few years.
There's a whole system.
The one game on this list I have no experience in is one that has been steadily dropping new content since its debut in 2014, Elder Scrolls Online. The game's latest chapter, Necrom, released this past summer and introduced the Arcanist, added 2 new companions to your cause, and advanced the Shadow over Morrowind saga. More recently, the game introduced the Endless Archive free update, which introduced a wave survival type event that players can take on solo or with a group, rewarding collectibles, achievements, and new class set items. The game has shown absolutely no signs of slowing down, and while numbers on Steam aren't that impressive, you have to remember the game also has a healthy fan base on both PlayStation and Xbox consoles. And we couldn't forget about Final Fantasy XIV, which continues to forge ahead after the success of Endwalker. As that storyline concludes, another begins, and in the recently revealed expansion, Dawn Trail, players will head to Turl, the New World and the birthplace of blue magic. The developers have revealed that 3 new jobs will be introduced in the expansion, which includes the Viper, a new damage-dealing class already revealed. There's a lot more coming to the game, but as expected, Japanese-based developers are waiting for their major FanFest event in January 2024 to reveal more. These games are continuing to pour thousands of hours of development time into their worlds, and these are just 4 examples throughout a genre that continues to try and innovate and excite. And just for fun, let's do a quick poll here. If you're still playing any of these games, drop a comment down below. I'm curious to see who's still diving in years later. The truth is, this is all the norm, the status quo, if you will. And if we are to usher in a second golden age of MMORPGs, something big, and I mean really big, needs to happen. As we've discussed, the board is set, the pieces strategically placed in the right positions, But in order for the genre to come roaring back, you need the right game, and I think one or a combination of a few upcoming games deployed around the same time might just be the final piece to the formula. That being said, there are a number of issues that have absolutely dogged the genre for some time, and all of the games we're about to talk about will have to combat these things. For starters, going into a game cold with no world building done at any point pre-launch is a huge blunder, one that has seen the demise of a number of games. Add on to that a lackluster world, which is the other side of that coin. You're creating a massive sandbox, and for the most part, the world is your oyster, so make it interesting. Upcoming games will also need to strategically navigate how to monetize. Is the era of the paid subscription over, or would players be willing to pay so long as they're not laden with in-game stores, battle passes?
See, that's the question that I continue to propose. And I get the pushback, people are fatigued with microtransactions, as like am I. But when it comes down to a subscription-based game, we have not seen that. We've seen subscription-based games add cash shops as opposed to like, okay, we're just not going to do that. And those are incredibly, like, that takes the limit of what they can make and just makes it exponential as opposed to that. But I do feel the subscription model is the most fair. PAX Day is considering bringing that in. I think it makes a lot of sense, especially when it comes to a sandbox where the players are the content. So you want people to be heavily invested month over month. However, we're seeing the optional subscription kind of come into play with the thing and kind of things like battle passes, obviously cash shops, and more. I do always want to stress that I think the best model at least starts with buy to play and then some other options there and after. New World is the same thing, but the FOMO in their battle pass is by far the most annoying thing. Same thing applies to Destiny, and I think there's one simple change they could make, allowing you to keep ownership of that so you could grind on it as you wish, like Halo does, would be chef's kiss.
Passes and other tropes that have worn our patience paper thin. Of course, there's also the dreaded patch cycle, which isn't just a content problem, but a logistical and resource-intensive one as well. Do you speed up the launch of new content but thin out the offering, or do you extend the window of time between major updates and really make them meaningful? And of course, there's always the issue ever present in the genre of player behavior. How do you combat cheating, griefing, harassment, and all the things the games in this genre have had to grapple with and have had years of experience addressing? All of these challenges and more are going to be subject for a lot of discussion as new MMOs come onto the scene. I have no doubt about that. They can't afford not to take these issues seriously. But let's put the worries of tomorrow aside and focus on the projects themselves, the games that could be the next ultimate experience. First is the Riot Games unannounced MMO RPG, which was first revealed back in 2021. If there's a company that understands how to world build in the modern sense, it's Riot.
Feels like it's been a
Think
lot
of characters
longer than
like
that, but...
Jinx, which have transcended games altogether and spun off into a variety of multimedia projects, including the hit show Arcane. Every new piece of art, short video, or bit of lore is helping develop the world of Runeterra, which is already incredibly vibrant in the minds of fans. Considering that League of Legends started as a MOBA and has expanded into an entire company dedicated to bringing its champions to life in new ways, you can easily connect the dots to understand why and how an MMORPG would be successful. You also can't discount the fact that MMOs take a vast amount of time and resources to develop, and while we're all working from the same clock, it's fair to say Riot has more than enough money to pour into this massive undertaking.
Money helps
Greg
a lot.
Street, who we talked about before and we'll talk about again in a minute, was leading this project for a few years, and even his initial guidance when helping get the team in place and philosophies aligned is monumentally valuable. The biggest issue I foresee with Riot's MMO is how you pull all of those threads together. Riot deploys almost too much world-building content. There are dozens, if not hundreds of characters, each with their own lore and connection to the world of Runeterra. Trying to piece all that together is a hurdle, but if the team manages to fight off the urge to go massive from the start and really create core systems around the characters and worlds that players already love, I think the game has a chance to be a huge success. A pretty big shock to the system was when Greg Street, who we've talked about a number of times already, announced he was leaving Riot Games. No stranger to talking to the gaming community, he quickly announced that he was forming a new studio, which was revealed in November. Fantastic Pixel Castle is a brand new studio led by Greg and backed by NetEase.
Awesome name for their
Their
studio.
ambition is to create a new fantasy IP with players and community at the center. The goal is to talk early and talk often with players about the type of game they want to see the developers create. That's something that Greg has been adamant about well before announcing his team. There's already a bit of information about the game on the Fantastic Pixel website, which I think many will find pretty interesting. This one passage about the world of Ghost gives us the clearest vision of the game at this point.
Beautiful artwork.
In Ghost, you travel to world shards to power up your characters, bring back resources, and build your fledgling civilization by growing and supporting the city's diverse and ever-changing factions. In turn, you'll see the city grow and evolve over time based on the choices and actions of players just like you, as an epic story unfolds season over season. In our game, you'll alternate between private realms that we call blue shards for you and your friends, and more public red shards that deliver a more traditional, massively multiplayer experience. At the onset, that sounds interesting, but we all know that good systems aren't enough when it comes to MMORPGs, and without a compelling story and an array of ways to fully immerse players in the world, a new IP will just be another blip on the radar. That's honestly what I think Project Ghost will struggle with the most, at least at the start. A new IP means building your world, characters, and systems from the ground up, and while I'm sure that's thrilling to the right team, it's also daunting and an uphill battle in the fight to grab players' attention. Nevertheless, with a talented team supporting the studio and the financial backing of NetEase, Project Ghost is sure to be a game to keep an eye on. We've already talked at length about World of Warcraft, but there's one element of the game's future we haven't touched upon: Microsoft. With the recent acquisition of Activision Blizzard, there's no telling what direction Phil Spencer will take the franchise and the studio.
It sounds like from all reports, and this could obviously just be, propaganda, is that setting Blizzard free, setting from the Activision or the old Activision kind of model to really try to create the best games. I did a React video talking about the consoles going extinct, for members. And if you guys are members, check that out. I think it's a really interesting video, but there's a lot that it kind of goes into just how all these things have changed. Console warriors, they're looking at such a narrow, small sliver of what gaming is. And I think what you'll see it evolve into is that kind of catalog of IP that, that people have access. So it's like, oh yeah, I'm subscribed to Game Pass, or I'm subscribed to PlayStation Plus. That essentially, I think, is just kind of where we're barreling forward as well. But we'll have to wait and see, because I don't think consoles are going away. I just think that their relevance is going to continue to be diminished over time. And with Microsoft, now owns Blizzard and WoW, and the Blizzard is working on a new survival MMO or something of that nature, unannounced. Bringing that on consoles, doing these kind of things. I think multiplayer games should be everywhere. I continue to, be a games should be everywhere kind of guy, and I will continue to be. But I don't need to make this console warrior. This is something I'm watching out for as well.
His presence alone on stage at this year's BlizzCon speaks volumes for the future of the brand, desperate in need of a reset. Now, what does that mean for World of Warcraft? No one knows, but the combination of Phil Spencer plus Chris Metzen is a powerful dynamic, and many, myself included, believe a true reset or sequel to World of Warcraft could be coming. There's no denying the game needs to be brought into this generation in terms of graphics and some systems, but obviously a game of that caliber takes time. My guess is that Blizzard was in a bit of a holding pattern as the Microsoft deal was being finalized. This is a wild hot take, but the Worldstone saga could be the final 3 chapters in the lifespan of our World of Warcraft as we know it today, giving the team time to develop something huge like World of Warcraft 2.
Yeah.
Another game that has the potential to massively shake up the genre is Ashes of Creation, which was originally started as a Kickstarter back in 2017.
Ashes of Creation gets a lot of traction in terms of, again, an unreleased game. It's the game that's going to be, it's perfect in that mind. So you see that, but I also see a level of fatigue with that amount of time. Same thing with Star Citizen, and to a degree, where it's it's been a project long in development, backed by humans, and then that patience has a timeline, right? Now, I think Ashes and Star Citizen both absolutely critical in terms of their communication and how they're focusing, what levels of transparency they lean into. But that's what you want to see. But we're still years away. Yeah, at least 2 or 3 years away, I think, from both games. Who knows? I'd love to see if Ashes is able to make 2025, but being that their Alpha 2 is scheduled for later this year, maybe early 2026, we'll see. Ultimately, we'll see.
Largely crowdfunded and has amassed millions as players have backed and continue to support the development of the game throughout its constant stream of supporter releases. The game has seen a lot of attention over the last couple years, with well-known MMO creators like Asmongold and Lazy Peon covering some of the major milestones in the game's development. I'll be honest, I am just still not there with this game. There's a lot of ambitious ideas out there, such as nodes, which are preset points in the world wrapped in a zone of influence, and as players participate in the node, the content of the world will react to that engagement, with those in control of the node's government having more control over things like diplomacy and the ability to modify building types and constructions. It's a system that feels vaguely familiar to the territories in New World, but more dynamic.
Yeah, definitely more dynamic.
It's just an idea at this point, and while there is plenty out there to read about systems...
Here's one of the thoughts that has just permeated my mind. As they have shared this and their thoughts, that's where I really like competition in the MMO space, so new ideas and good ideas can be tested, where the tribal nature kind of the subscription model, because it really does lock you into one game, made like ideas just come and go. And I think when we look at New World, like the question is that, like, let's say this is the premier, Ashes of Creation has the premier kind of node player impact on the world, kind of system. What's the, like the goal would be is that, yeah, let's let a lot of people start to adopt that. So if this system is good, it'd be really, my hope is that we would see it, trickle out, because I think Amazon has the resources to do so. Or imagine if they decided to do that as a part of their next MMO, the Lord of the Rings one. Hopefully good ideas win. And my concern, though, also is that what feels like wins more than anything else is what makes more money. So what draws in the casual player, what appeals to the single player in an MMO mindset, because those players are so voluminous that they do help bring in a lot of money, where kind of that's where that I get it. But man, the heart wants what it wants.
Systems like nodes, seeing it in action on a massive scale is a more distant reality. What we have seen are a lot of mounts, some gameplay, and various subsystems within the game that will ultimately feed into the overall vision for Ashes of Creation. Like all these upcoming games, Ashes is faced with its own challenges. In many regards, it'll encounter much of the new IP growing pains that Project Ghost will grapple with. But there's also the prolonged impact of crowdfunding a gaming project.
Yeah, that's going to be
When you
interesting.
ask players to pay to support the development of a long-term project, there's an element of community erosion that occurs the longer the project drags on. In the case of Ashes, the game has been in the public eye for over 5 years, and while MMORPGs historically take a long time to develop, everything that happens from here on out will be scrutinized by the community, since they are technically investors in the game's success. It's a tricky situation.
I struggle with this word technically investors in this case, because like in my mind that becomes more of a legal aspect, like they have claim to ownership, and I get the emotional connection, but if anybody's thinking like, hey, that's where it's like they're backers in this case, where you're saying, yes, this is something I want to support, but there's no ownership like piece of it. You're not buying shares, for example. And who knows, maybe that would be a better funding model, that you would own like if it was crowdfunded off of shares, you own those shares have value, you can sell those shares, or you can, I don't know, hold on to them. That would be more of the term. But yeah, like if you are a backer of these projects and think you are an investor, that's where I get a lot. That's why, I guess a lot of the frustration I see online could make sense. But you guys let me know what you're thinking on that.
One we're seeing play out in other parts of the industry as well, with games like Star Citizen. So how Ashes manages to navigate those
Star
waters, only time will tell. The developers recently revealed that Alpha 2 would be coming in early 2024, and that they're also stopping all pre-launch packs, so things are trending in the right direction. I wanted to end by highlighting some of the Eastern MMORPGs that are also coming down the pike, and while I haven't really cracked into them, That's because they're just not real and tangible for a lot of us outside of South Korea. There's no denying it. Games like Genshin Impact and Lost Ark have helped bridge the gap between Eastern-style MMOs and a Western audience. Those types of games did have a foothold in the West before, but it feels like now more than ever, they're becoming mainstream. 3 games, Blue Protocol, ArcAge 2, and Throne and Liberty, are titles I think are worth keeping an eye on. Each presents different ideas, but they take concepts of fantasy and high fantasy and package them in a way that many Western players will gravitate to. Games like Blue Protocol are set to feature dynamic action combat, deep character customization, and is free to play, which has its own pros and cons, as we all know.
Cons.
Other games like Throne and Liberty promise seamless open-world exploration, massive-scale PvPvE, and high fantasy elements on a scale we've come to expect from Eastern MMOs. There is simply no shortage of new games on the horizon, but these games will face their own tests, namely the grind and pay-to-win gacha systems that are synonymous with Korean games. Heck, it's the reason so many people I know
it's gonna be interesting Amazon's impact
of
both of these.
It was a slog, and for any of these games to find an audience in the West, it's a problem the developers need to account for. Who knows if they will, but having multiple games from both East and West dropping in harmony is going to put a lot of attention on the genre, which will be exciting. So what do you think? Is the second golden age of MMORPGs on the horizon? There's no doubt the genre continues to be a pillar of the gaming community, but after decades in the spotlight, MMOs have just quietly pulsed along, and those major disruptions that used to cause fervor amongst gamers and just everyone just doesn't exist anymore. I think that's all going to change, but I really want to know what you guys think. Leave us a comment down below and let me know what it's going to take to bring you back into an MMORPG. Guys, this is a very different type of video than you're used to seeing from us, so if you appreciate the work that went into writing, producing, and editing this project, drop us a like and consider subscribing to the channel. Your support means we can keep Schmo on the payroll for a whole nother month, so help us out. Of course, you can always join us on Discord if you want to take part in daily giveaways, or just talk to the team about new and upcoming games. That link, as always, is below. My name is Kodiak, and from everyone here at Legacy Gaming, thanks for watching, and play on.
Good video. Excellent video. I'd be very curious, especially about his question to you guys, if you want to sound off here. What would get you back into an MMO if you haven't left or have never tried? I think that's going to be an interesting kind of insight into people's minds, especially if you made it all the way through this reaction video as well. Appreciate you being here. Yeah, so guys, just a couple things. If you want to get a part of the Discord, top link for the podcast Discord, all of it is kind of breaks down all the content that I produce across the interwebs, and I hope that you find something to enjoy. It's a open invitation. I'll keep inviting you guys to that. The second link is for the membership here. If you guys haven't seen, I am working on building my own game, and I am working to fund it through the YouTube revenue that I get from Google AdSense and members. Members make actually up a huge chunk of the revenue that I made last year, and they help cover the expenses of the incredible editor, Jack. So say hey to Jack, or Jack say hey. He's just great. So if you guys want, membership starts at $3, and if you want to go above and beyond, the choices are up to you. Again, this video is sponsored by a member in terms of keeping mid-roll ads off, and I am looking to pick up sponsors here on the channel to help cover that gap, because at the end of the day, like, I make content for free for you guys to enjoy, and that's the goal, that I hope you enjoy it. And if you want to go above and beyond, then I have some options available for you. So thank you so much to the members, but thank you also so much to those who hit like, who watched all the way through this video, who check out the other videos as well. So much to do, and yeah, I'm just gonna wrap it up with that. Thank you guys so much for your time today. Hopefully I'll see you in the next video, but until then, take care.